Todd, you're known for creating the Spawn series, you're known for doing a run of Spider-Man, you've got your own toys out there as well. Reckoning, that's a big deal as well. Do you want to tell us how you got involved in that?
Ex-major leaguer Curt Schilling, who pitched for a while with the Arizona Diamondbacks. I live in Phoenix. He and I sort of bumped into each other a few times, became sort of acquaintances, did some charity work together. He gets traded to Boston, finally breaks the curse, brings the World Series to him. But in the midst of all that, he gives me a phone call and says, Todd, I'm getting near the end of my career. I got to start thinking about what I'm going to do post-athletic. And I'm a huge gamer, and I want to start a video game company. I've got this idea, and there's this other guy, R.A. Salvatore, I've been involved with, and I just called to, just like you, out of the blue. I'm going to fly you guys out. I'm going to give you the pitch. You guys tell me whether you want to have anything to do with it. So we go there. Part of it is, he says, I got to still play ball for a couple years so I can make some money and I can help fund this venture. But we need to get this thing off the ground. I need some people here that can sort of help springboard it. So RA goes off, comes back with this crazy manual that's got 10,000-year history that will never scratch the surface of all the information, but it allows us then to have some frame of reference and logic in everything we do within this sort of made-up, fantasy world. And then, my job then is to put a visual to it, because you can read all you want, but at some point they hit the on button on that TV and they expect something to be there. So when Curt asked me to come on artistically, I wasn't interested in just being a concept artist. I'd done some of that stuff. Yep. And I go, Curt, I'll give you a lot of names. You let me have control over the whole smattering of anything that you see or hear with your ears or eyes, and I'm your man. But that means everything: music, cinemas, sound effects, backgrounds, animation, concept drawing, color, shading, lighting, everything. I have to at least sort of put a check mark next to it. And he said, yeah, sure, let's go. And we started off, we started developing this Kingdoms of Amalur sort of idea, and then he bought Big Huge Game, which was a development house, console game developer. We then took that idea that Curt had and put it onto the development of what Big Huge Game was doing. And then EA came on board and put some money and some marketing behind it and said, yeah, we like what you guys are doing. Let's go see if we can't get it out and see if some of the consumers won't buy it.
How do you go about making a fantasy IP that's new, still familiar to fantasy gamers, but different in its own way?
Mm-hmm. Well, there's the task is you have a blank slate, but you're falling into a couple sort of traps, and the traps are it's fantasy, a la sort of Lord of the Rings. So there's certain expectations there. You're going to have your trolls and your elves and your wizards and magic spells and castles and all these other things that are just going to be your obvious touch point. And then you also have that because it's an RPG game, that you're going to have 100 different people could play the game and expect 100 different things out of the game. I've found in talking the role-playing game, no two role players are the exact same. They each have a tweak that they want. They each have a flavor that they like in the game that they want to see more of, or that they hope actually does what it is that they want. So we now have to create with a blank slate sort of the backlog of what all these characters are and why they're there. That's RA's job. Now we have to get dumped on my table. Now we have to actually start building the whole world, literally the whole world, that gives them 200 plus hours of running around. And the task, the balancing act, and Ken Ralston comes in and sort of helps us with the quest, so we sort of now know how big we have to make this sort of environment so we'll basically accomplish everything he wants to do with it, is can we, in a weird way, and this is sort of the blessing and the curse, can we be all things to all people? And that's really sort of I think going to be sort of the success or failure we'll find out in the future here of whether we can pull off the task. Because some people come in and all they want to do is just level up and loot and just have a good time. Other people then have a little bit more testosterone and they hit skip past all this sort of the talking dialogue parts, and they just want to go and kill stuff and then maybe pick up a couple things, and they just want to get the biggest swords and things like that. So you have this wide variety that's in there. What we have to do is make sure that it's all in there. In the blueprint, all those aspects are there: humor, dark, funny, grim, blood, not I mean, everything you can imagine.
It's a big task.
Yeah, it's all, and then when you're all done with it, unlike a movie and a video game, or excuse me, a movie and a comic book and television like I've done, where I get final say as director, you just come for the ride. I put it down, you basically follow my lead. Once we build it, we hand it over to you. You're the game player. And now you have the steering wheel, and on top of that, we give you a character that has no background. Unlike Superman or Spider-Man, using comic book characters, that you already know who they are. James Bond, you know who they are when they start the game. This one, you don't. Your character is resurrected. You have no background. It is up to you, the driver, the player, to now basically make the history of this player. And oh, by the way, depending on who you picked and how you play the game, will change the outcome of how everybody's reacting to you. So if you finish the quest and want to start it all over and pick a different character, a different class, the world's going to react differently to you. So you're not going to have the exact same game with a different paint job on top of it. So the question is, can we deliver all of that and disappoint nobody and not have anybody walk away frustrated? There's the big if that comes with making an RPG game.
It's a huge ask. Let's hope you're successful. Now let's touch onto combat. You're heavily involved in that. What's your take on what combat should be in a game?
Well, there's two things. Combat in the game should just be cool, right? I mean, what are you talking about? It's very visceral. You don't do it for the sake of just going, oh, it was okay, I lopped that guy's head off, that was quite nice. You're going, if I'm going to slay a 20-foot giant, let's slay the giant. That's what I kept saying. I go, guys, if we're going to do action, then let's do it. It takes as much time to develop good action as it does bad action. It takes the same amount of time, effort, and money. But more specifically in an RPG game, because again, if it was strictly an action game, then we would have used different software and we could do different things. There's been a lot of RPG games over the years that the action part of it seems to be almost a secondary thought. It doesn't seem to be as high a priority of it. I didn't want the action to be a high priority because I want it to be an action game. It's just that if within the confines of playing as an RPG player, you decide to go into that action arena and you open that door, then damn it better be as good as we can possibly make it, right? Just like spellcasting better be as good as we can make it, and the animation should be as good as we can make it. So again, I'm not advocating if you're a role player and you just like questing, go ahead, rock and roll, do your thing. If you want to veer and have a little bit of fun in the action, it's going to hit you hard, and it's going to be big, and it's going to be gigantic, and hopefully you'll walk away going, wow, I'm not an action guy, but that was kind of cool. And you'll go, and maybe we'll even tempt you to do a little more action if we do our job right.
Moving on to other things, as a comic book artist and creator, are there any other comic series you'd like to see made into a game? Yeah, this character called Spawn. Right, because I had like 3 or 4 iterations of it, but I mean that was when technology wasn't nearly as sophisticated. Yeah, there were some games that back in the day.
I think our first one was a left and right scrolling game, right? But I've got to finish up the script on the movie, launch that, get the name to mean something more globally, and then we'll come back and then we'll just do a kick-ass, really sort of creepy, dark, so all the things that a lot of my fans sort of like out of it, and we'll get that game out there. And then that game will look more like my art. Again, Reckoning was intentionally not meant to look like my art because, again, there's that many people in the world that know Todd McFarlane, and there's this many gamers, right? So it was trying to play to this big pool of gamers, and I didn't want them to have the sort of the knowledge of having to go, why does it look like that? And who is that? I push that aside. Let's just make a hell of video game. Someday I'll get my sort of signature look video game. This Reckoning wasn't it, but maybe someday.
So would you say it's harder working on a brand new IP or a comic series that already exists and turning that into a game?
I mean, my first reaction says they both have a big hurdle to get past. I mean, obviously the big hurdle in trying to do something new is the upside is that you can't do any wrong, right? Because everything you develop and you put in front of a new player, he assumes it's correct because he has no preconceived notion. The hurdle, the big hurdle, is just getting them to give a damn because they've got all these other games now that have meaning to it. Why this game? Why now? The counter to that is if you do something that has already existed for 20, 30, 40 years, people are now coming in with a preconceived notion. I mean, we've seen it with video games, we've seen it with movies, we've seen it with television shows, that they're going, the book was better than the movie, right? I mean, they bring the baggage with them, and there's always a chance you're going to let down that core audience that has been sort of supportive of it at that same time. So if I had to literally flip a coin, and I artistically, I think starting from scratch, because nobody gets to tell you anything is wrong. It's just getting into the marketplace is just so daunting of a task right now.
And just a quick one as well. At Comic-Con, we saw you demonstrating how to stab someone and how visceral it was. Have you stabbed someone before, done something weird like that? It seems like you seem to know what you're doing.
No. I know. I haven't stabbed anybody while I've been awake. You know, although I've dreamt I have plenty of mortal enemies. But what I do, here's where it derives from. Is that I've been an athlete my whole life. And I know about being competitive and getting sort of adrenaline going.
Physicality.
Yeah, and so I know that I've never been a knight, but I know that if a guy was coming at me and it was I either lop his head off or he lops my head off, I go, two things are going to happen. First, I'm going to try and get the first blow in. It's going to be with anger and with grit and determination. There's going to be no passive head lopping, because I'll be dead before he's dead. And then once you lop the head off, then there's not even going to be any compassion to it, because there's a guy behind him that wants to kill me too. So I don't even have the time to even lament about the guy I just killed, because there's 25 guys that are trying to get me in this battle. 20 against 1, I got to just keep going. And when I hopefully slay them all, then I'll just sort of catch my collective breath, not sort of rejoice over it, go get a good night's sleep and go against the troll factions the next day and see if I can't do it again. But what I was saying was, what bothered me in video games, especially sort of low-level RPG stuff, is that the stabbing comes at the same point. There's no acknowledgement that there's scale or there's size or there's weight or anything. So they treat everything exactly the same, and it bothered me. It bothered me. Even simple stuff like, if I hit you this way, you should fall that way. Doesn't seem like a complicated sort of thing that we should be able to get in our
physics.
Game. Yeah, you go here. And oh, by the way, once you hit here, besides the head snap, I don't want it just to be a head snap. I want it to be a head snap. Look, I'm going to give you a head snap. That seems pretty good. And I'm going to do the exact same head snap, but I'm going to put my body into it, right? It's the same head snap, but once you sort of put the rest of your body into it, it just seems grander. Just seems like now, because if I'm going to hit somebody with everything I got, I don't want them to just go, oh, ouch, fall down dead. I want them to feel like I basically chopped them in half.
Like my dad always said, if you think you're in trouble, hit them first and hit them hard.
That's right. So look, there's a guy who creates stuff. This is the thing that moms don't get. He's a guy who creates stuff and has to come up with literally entire civilizations of people in my brain, and then I do a lot of writing too. Because I create a serial killer in a book, or a doctor or a policeman, I'm not advocating for any of it. They just have to be convincing. So if you're going to put something on screen, it has to be as convincing as possible. I'm not saying go out and lop people's heads off. I'm just saying if our character is capable of doing it, that should be convincing. And if you're going to have a serial killer, he shouldn't be nice so mom isn't disturbed by him. That mom is disturbed when I write about serial killers means I did a good serial killer. So again, I don't want any of your children to be one any more than the doctor that's in that exact same story. They just have to be characters that seem real. And so everything that we do in the video game has to feel real. They have to feel like they're made out of flesh and blood.
Todd, I could listen to you all day, but we've got to go because we're out of time. But thank you very much for your words of wisdom.
Sure. All right. Appreciate you having us.
Thank you. Quite a physical interview.
Okay.